Have you ever wondered why some spiritual seekers seem to effortlessly progress on their path, while others, despite years of meditation, study, and sincere effort, feel stuck in the same patterns of suffering and limitation? Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right spiritually, meditating daily, reading sacred texts, practicing devotion, yet somehow spiritual awakening feels as distant as ever? Have you ever questioned whether there's some invisible barrier preventing you from experiencing the divine consciousness that the great masters describe? If these questions just stirred something deeply familiar and perhaps frustrating in your spiritual heart, you're exactly where you need to be. Because what I'm about to share will reveal the most crucial warning that Paramhansa Yogananda gave about the hidden obstacle that blocks spiritual progress for most seekers. And it's not what you think. This understanding will completely transform how you approach your spiritual practice and may remove the very barrier that has been keeping deeper realization just out of reach. You see, most spiritual seekers believe that enlightenment is blocked by obvious things: lack of discipline, insufficient meditation, worldly attachments, or not being devoted enough. But the great spiritual master Paramhansa Yogananda revealed something that changes everything about how we understand what truly prevents spiritual awakening. He urgently taught us, according to this spiritual understanding, the greatest obstacle to enlightenment may not be your desires, your thoughts, or your circumstances. It may be the subtle spiritual pride that convinces you that you are the one doing the spiritual work. When you believe that your efforts, your practices, your understanding are what will bring you to the divine, you may create the very separation that prevents divine union. True spiritual awakening may come not through personal achievement, but through complete surrender of the ego that thinks it can achieve enlightenment. The moment you stop trying to become enlightened and start allowing awakening to happen through you, the barriers may dissolve and divine consciousness can reveal itself as your true nature. Whether you consider yourself a beginner on the spiritual path or an advanced practitioner, whether you've had profound spiritual experiences or feel like you're still searching for your first glimpse of the divine, these teachings can offer valuable insights. Please understand that these perspectives represent one spiritual understanding among many, and each person's journey toward awakening may unfold in unique ways. Different spiritual traditions have varying approaches to concepts of ego, enlightenment, and spiritual realization. If you've ever noticed that your most profound spiritual experiences happened when you weren't trying to have them, or felt that the harder you strive for enlightenment, the more elusive it becomes, or sensed that there might be something in your very approach to spirituality that's creating obstacles, then you may be recognizing what Yogananda called the paradox of spiritual effort, where the ego's attempt to achieve enlightenment may become the very thing that prevents it. And I promise you, by the end of this sacred journey together, you may never approach your spiritual practice the same way again. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through Yogananda's most urgent teaching about what he called the ego's final trap, an understanding that reveals how spiritual pride may block awakening and how to shift from effortful seeking to graceful allowing. Please understand that these teachings represent one spiritual perspective among many, and each person's relationship with spiritual practice may differ significantly. But first, let me ask you something that might feel uncomfortably familiar. Have you ever caught yourself feeling spiritually superior to others because of your practices, knowledge, or experiences? Have you noticed yourself becoming attached to being seen as spiritual, awakened, or advanced on the path? Have you felt frustrated when your spiritual efforts don't produce the results you expect, as if enlightenment is something you should be able to achieve through the right techniques? If you're recognizing these subtle forms of what some call spiritual ego right now, you may be experiencing what Yogananda called the Great Awakening, where you begin to see that the very ego that seeks enlightenment might be the primary obstacle to finding it. Yogananda explained it with startling clarity when he said, "The ego is so cunning that it will even use spirituality to strengthen itself. It will collect spiritual experiences like trophies, accumulate knowledge like possessions, and practice techniques like achievements. But according to this understanding, enlightenment may not be an achievement of the ego. It may be the dissolution of the ego. You cannot think your way to the divine, effort your way to truth, or practice your way to enlightenment. These may prepare the ground, but the final step is always surrender, the complete letting go of the one who thinks they can become enlightened. When the ego stops trying to get enlightenment and simply allows divine consciousness to recognize itself, then what you have been seeking may reveal itself as what you have always been. Now, you might be wondering how this understanding can actually help you move beyond the spiritual obstacles you've been facing, and here's where it becomes truly liberating. According to Yogananda's deepest teachings, there is what he called the law of divine grace, a spiritual principle that shows how enlightenment may come not through personal effort, but through the ego's surrender to divine will. This law reveals that when you stop trying to achieve enlightenment and start allowing it to unfold naturally, you may remove the primary barrier that has been blocking your spiritual progress. Think about your own spiritual journey for a moment. Can you identify times when you felt most connected to divine consciousness? Were you striving and efforting, or were you in a state of surrender, openness, or letting go? Take a moment to really feel into those sacred experiences, because what you're recognizing may be the natural way spiritual awakening actually happens, not through the ego's achievement, but through the ego's dissolution. This recognition you just felt, it's what Yogananda called the moment of ego transparency. Every time you see through the ego's spiritual games, you don't achieve enlightenment. You may realize that enlightenment was never something to be achieved. And here's what makes this so transformative. When you understand that you are not trying to become enlightened, but allowing the divine consciousness that you may already be to recognize itself, the entire spiritual path can become a joyful surrender rather than an effortful struggle. Now, I want you to be completely honest with yourself for a moment. When you think about your spiritual practice, do you approach it as something you're doing to get somewhere, or can you sense that it might be a way of allowing what's already here to reveal itself? Can you feel how the very desire to achieve enlightenment might be creating the separation you're trying to overcome? Your answer will reveal how ready you are to embrace what many consider one of the most liberating truths in spirituality. If you sense that shift from achieving to allowing, then you're ready for what comes next. Because now I'm going to share exactly how Yogananda taught people to move beyond spiritual ego through what he called sacred surrender practice. The art of letting go of the one who seeks so that what is sought can reveal itself. The method he taught works through what he called ego dissolution meditation, consciously releasing the spiritual seeker so that divine consciousness can recognize itself without obstruction. Let's practice this together right now. I want you to close your eyes for just a moment and notice the one who wants to be enlightened. Feel the spiritual seeker, the one who practices, the one who desires divine realization. As Yogananda taught, instead of strengthening this seeker through effort, simply let it go. Ask yourself, who is it that wants enlightenment? Who is it that practices? Who is it that seeks? Then gently release the need to be anyone special, including being spiritual. Did you feel that moment of letting go? According to this teaching, that may be divine consciousness recognizing itself when the ego stops trying to achieve what it already is. If you felt even a subtle release just now, imagine what happens when you approach every spiritual practice as an opportunity to let go rather than achieve something. But there's a deeper aspect of this teaching that Yogananda said was essential for complete spiritual freedom. He called it sacred ordinariness, the recognition that enlightenment may not be a special state to be achieved, but the natural condition that emerges when spiritual seeking stops. Here's how Yogananda taught this life-changing understanding. Instead of trying to have extraordinary spiritual experiences or achieve special states of consciousness, begin to recognize the divine in the most ordinary moments of awareness. When you're simply present without trying to be spiritual, you might discover that presence itself is divine consciousness. When you love without trying to be loving, you might recognize that love itself is your true nature. When you're peaceful without trying to achieve peace, you might realize that peace is what you are when you stop trying to be anything else. He taught that enlightenment may not be the ego achieving something special, but the ego getting out of the way so that what is naturally present can be recognized. Let me share a story that beautifully illustrates this transformation. As I tell you this, I want you to ask yourself, what might change in my spiritual life if I stopped trying to achieve enlightenment and started allowing it to reveal itself? There was a devoted student who came to Yogananda feeling spiritually frustrated and exhausted, saying, "Master, I have been practicing meditation for 15 years. I follow all the techniques perfectly. I study the scriptures daily. I live a pure life, but I still don't feel enlightened. I see other students having profound experiences while I struggle with the same mental patterns. I'm beginning to think I'm not capable of spiritual realization. What am I doing wrong?" Yogananda looked at him with infinite compassion and said something that completely shattered his understanding. "My dear child, according to our spiritual understanding, your problem may not be that you're doing something wrong. Your problem may be that you're doing something at all. You have been trying so hard to become enlightened that you may have strengthened the very ego that prevents enlightenment. You have been polishing the prison bars instead of walking out of the open door." According to this teaching, enlightenment may not be something you achieve. It may be something you are when you stop trying to be anything else. The consciousness that is aware of your seeking, the peace that exists between your thoughts, the love that motivates your spiritual longing. This may not be your consciousness, your peace, your love. This may be divine consciousness recognizing itself when you get out of the way. He then taught him the sacred surrender practice and ego dissolution meditation. Instead of trying to achieve spiritual states, he began practicing letting go of the spiritual seeker. Instead of efforting toward enlightenment, he started allowing divine consciousness to recognize itself naturally. Instead of strengthening his spiritual identity, he began dissolving into the awareness that was always present. Over the course of several months of this practice, something beautiful began to unfold. He stopped feeling spiritually frustrated because he was no longer trying to get anywhere. His meditation became effortless because there was no one trying to meditate perfectly. His daily life became naturally peaceful because he wasn't trying to be spiritual. Most importantly, he discovered that what he had been seeking might have been what had been seeking through him all along. He realized, "Master, I thought I needed to become enlightened, but enlightenment may never have been absent. I was just too busy trying to achieve it to notice that it might already be here." When I share this story with people, they often ask with amazement, can letting go of spiritual seeking really lead to enlightenment? According to Yogananda's teachings, the answer may be yes, because enlightenment might not be something you get. It may be something you are when you stop trying to get anything. Now here's what Yogananda wanted everyone to understand at the deepest level. He taught that the final obstacle to enlightenment may always be the spiritual ego, the part of us that wants to achieve, attain, or become enlightened. As he beautifully said, the last thing the ego will surrender is its spiritual seeking, because this seeking makes it feel special and important. But according to this understanding, true enlightenment may begin when even the spiritual seeker dissolves. When there is no one left to become enlightened, enlightenment may reveal itself as the natural state. When there is no one left to achieve divine consciousness may recognize itself as what you have always been. The greatest spiritual realization may be that there was never anyone who needed to be enlightened. There may only be divine consciousness appearing as the play of seeking and finding itself. If you're truly ready to let go of spiritual seeking and allow enlightenment to reveal itself, then make this sacred commitment right now. I release the need to achieve enlightenment or become anything special spiritually. I surrender the spiritual seeker and allow divine consciousness to recognize itself naturally. I choose to be ordinary and present rather than trying to be spiritual and special. I trust that what I have been seeking may already be here when I stop trying to find it. I say it with your whole heart. The divine consciousness you have been seeking may be celebrating this surrender. As Paramhansa Yogananda beautifully reminded us, the final warning I give to all sincere seekers is this: beware of the spiritual ego that thinks it can achieve enlightenment. According to this understanding, the very one who seeks enlightenment may be the obstacle to finding it. When you stop trying to become enlightened and simply allow yourself to be what you already are, you may discover that enlightenment was never something to be achieved, but something to be recognized. The greatest spiritual practice may be the practice of not practicing. The art of getting out of your own way so that divine consciousness can recognize itself as your true nature. Before we part ways, I want to leave you with something sacred you can do right now to practice ego surrender. Take out your phone and write yourself one word that represents your commitment to letting go of spiritual achievement. Perhaps surrender, allowing, release, or trust. Put it where you'll see it tomorrow morning. This simple act will anchor your understanding that enlightenment may not be something you achieve, but something you allow. If this message awakened you to the possibility that what you seek may already be here, I'd be deeply honored if you shared it with someone who needs this recognition today. Sometimes we become the vessel through which divine consciousness reaches another soul who has been trying so hard to find what was never lost. I'd love to know, what was that one word you wrote down about spiritual surrender? Share it in the comments below. Your willingness to let go of spiritual seeking might be exactly what someone else needs to stop trying and start allowing. Until our souls meet again, in the divine consciousness that we may share, may you remember that you may not be a seeker of enlightenment, but enlightenment seeking to recognize itself as you. Remember, dear soul, every moment you stop trying to be spiritual and simply allow yourself to be present, every time you release the need to achieve anything and rest in what is already here, you create space for divine consciousness to recognize itself. Honor the sacred ordinariness of your being, trust in the natural unfolding of awareness, and live each day knowing that you may not need to become enlightened. You may already be the enlightenment you seek. Through understanding that the seeker and the sought may be one, you discover that the spiritual journey may not be about going somewhere else, but about recognizing what has never been absent. This is Yogananda's most liberating gift, the recognition that you may not be separate from the enlightenment you seek, but may be the very expression of divine consciousness that has been seeking to know itself as you throughout all eternity.